Winning sales isn't as easy as it used to be, especially in a challenging economic environment with a never-ending stream of new competitors coming onto the scene. It's no longer enough to have a standout product, a great team, or even massive funding, although that doesn't hurt. Now, anyone in B2B sales needs a lot more in their toolkit in order to succeed. I'm Jane Singer, and welcome back to A Seat at the Table. In each episode, we sit down with leaders, innovators, authors, and entrepreneurs so that we can learn best practices that will empower our businesses. Meet Margo White, a dynamic strategist and author with over 22 years of experience transforming how traditional industries sell, communicate, and evolve. In this episode of A Seat at the Table, she'll tell us why precision beats volume and how to build a system that turns chaos into actionable data. Understanding the deal psychology that's foundational to winning corporate contracts, and how identity is what motivates people to buy, not logic or even emotion. This episode is part of our new Sales Power series, where you'll learn the power moves that separate sales leaders from everyone else. I can't wait to sit down with Margo and find out how to fire up my sales game. Margo, thank you so much for joining us here on the Seat at the Table. I am so excited about what you're talking about today, and I think everybody listening to this show is going to absolutely find this to be incredibly game-changing.
Jane, thank you for having me again, and I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting conversation because you are hosting it.
Oh, well, thank you. Now, you talk about the fact that B2B salespeople often chase volume and call it hard work, and that real pros design precision. They're building systems that turn chaos into patterns, right? And they're avoiding, randomness. And I think that's really important because, as you mentioned, it's not luck that closes complex B2B deals, right? It's structure disguised as intuition. I think, that's just so powerful. Can you unpack that for us?
Absolutely. Let's start with precision first.
Okay.
Big deals are not closed quickly. We are gaslighted by most e-commerce gurus to to believe that if we set up a certain system that leads a prospect from the first click to the email to this and that, that we will be able to close any deal. And that is a big fat lie, because you and I know, and every person involved in B2B or even high-level sales, okay? And I'm not talking about just selling online, assets, which is amazing. But when you get into businesses like finance, insurance, same B2B, which is long term, well, here's where the deal becomes complicated. And when people, marketers, business people, do not get instant reward from their funnels, they think that it's just the wrong prospect, or the timing is wrong, or they cannot close them, okay? So my system was designed to break this pattern for whether the person is just starting out in B2B or high-level deals or their experienced ones, just to break this pattern of thinking that, this deals are short-term, they're long-term, they're complicated, but you do need a structure to go through.
That's so important. And you're absolutely right. I was literally having this same conversation with another friend of mine this morning, talking about how it's presented, right, like you said, through these online gurus that, this is the kind of thing that you can achieve overnight, right? And it's so true. It takes such a long time. It's such a process to be able to understand what works, what doesn't work, and nurture things along. I'm so happy you brought that up. I think it's absolutely critical that people hear that. Now, you also talk about the fact that in B2B, nobody buys alone. Understanding that invisible dance, as you say, between members of the C-suite is deal psychology. Can you dive into that a bit deeper?
Sure. Well, first of all, let's start with the purpose in B2B. There's a purchasing I like in luxury, they say that there's purchasing personality in every person. It's different, you know. You and I, purchasing personality. Let's talk about that, right? In B2B, even if one person makes a decision, first of all, they're making it selfishly. You know, it's a selfish decision. And secondly, they still need to defend it.
Mm.
Even if they are a sole decision maker, they need to defend it to their CFO who raises a brow. They need to defend it to their HR, to the 400 employees, and et cetera, et cetera. So dopamine sales, like getting the person excited during the meeting and then expecting them to go through the deal. Again, it doesn't work in that situation because dopamine sales, what does it do? It makes you pull out the card, fill your details in and buy, even if it's $100,000 product. In B2B, it doesn't work that way because you need to go through certain procedures. And the difference between dopamine sales and the structural sales is that dopamine sales are focused on other things. They're focused on getting the person excited as opposed to making him want, making him realize that the deal is great from different angles, okay, and making them chase that deal from different angles. Because, and this is important, people need, listening to this, need to understand, okay? You need to win the rooms that you will never enter. And hear me out here. You're sitting with your prospect, whether it's a sole decision maker or not. He will then go into the room that you will never enter, but he will be sitting with his CFO, HR, or just another person, maybe his wife, husband, whatever, he's her. And you will not enter that room. You need to equip your prospect to win the conversation in that room. Okay. And to do that, you cannot go with dopamine sales. You need to know one thing that my book basically is about, which is the person sitting in front of you a survivor or inventor? Okay. And that's how you sell, because if it's survivor, then this person will defend your idea because it helps him build the walls, okay, for his castle. And if the person is inventor, then he will defend your idea because it will help him build the bridge into the future. Okay.
That's so interesting. And I like the fact that you refer to as dopamine sales, because you're absolutely right. That's so much the way sales training has been taught to people for years and years and years, right? Get people so worked up, so excited in the meeting, they're going to buy now. And then, as you're pointing out, actually, certainly in B2B, it doesn't happen that way. So I think that's such an important point to bring up. Now, could you explain a little bit what you mean about a survivor versus an inventor, and how would we identify that when we're meeting with a client?
Well, it all goes back to Einstein's theory, actually. Einstein was once asked the question, like, what is the most important question that we can ask you today? That was the question that he was asked. And he said the most important question any person can ask is whether they're living in a friendly or hostile universe. And then he uncovered that if we live in a friendly universe, we will spend our lives building bridges. And if we live in hostile universe, then we will spend it building walls. And neither is better. You would think that, hey, let's be inventors. Let's be in a friendly universe. Let's build bridges. But actually, that's not how we survived. Because if we would chase that shiny, bright thing all the time, human race wouldn't survive, right? Just imagine you and I, like 40,000 years ago, chasing that shiny bright thing, somewhere in the woods. Jane, where do you think we would end up?
Dinner?
Probably because human beings cannot stand, I mean, with tiger, for example, right? We're just late lunch. That's
Yes.
not a competition. Okay.
Right.
So being a survivor, like survivors are 80% of all human beings you will meet, whether they're in corporate sector or not. And we should praise them, and we should build our sales models around them. And what happens with survivors in dopamine sales? Survivors are building walls, which means that they only change something if something is threatening them. Which is why usually marketers say things like, "Hey, you should use fear." Okay, not with everyone, by the way, but lots of marketers go like, you should use fear. You should scare them that if they will not change, then something bad will happen down the road. Have you heard about that
I think that's
before?
really interesting, and you're absolutely right. Everything is built around fear because, like you said, people are more likely to take some kind of an action to avoid a negative consequence more so than to benefit from a potential positive one. I'm not sure I'm expressing that very well, but
Absolutely. No, you're
that's the idea.
absolutely right. Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that's a really important point that you're bringing up here with regard to how a prospect is likely to interpret what you're saying. And as you're saying, you need to be able to give them the tools that they can then, once they leave the meeting and they're in, as you said, a room that you're not in, be able to defend this particular proposition.
Like their own, right? Like their own
Yeah.
idea. So absolutely, like 100%, you nailed it. You know what Survivor is. And by the way, most marketing structures and everything should build around survivors. But then there are inventors, and you cannot fear them. You actually, if you will use fear on them, they will just close and they will not do anything because inventors do not do anything from the fear. They do things from excitement, and that's another sphere of marketing. There are another marketers that say, "Hey, you have to make the person excited," and none of them are wrong. Both are right. It's just you have to use those tactics to two different types, and you have to identify which type is sitting in front of you. And by the way, it's not that difficult to do. Even if our listener right now will never, go to my website and find out who is Survivor Inventor or read my book. It's just imagine survivors are building walls, inventors are building bridges. Just remember that, okay? And before you meet the person, track what was his strategy or her strategy before your meeting in other decisions. Okay. And you will see that pattern. Once you see that, you cannot unsee it. And by the way, I have a question for you right now. Do you think of yourself as a survivor or inventor looking back to your life?
We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
Oh, for me, an inventor for better or worse. Survivor a little bit, but probably too much on the the building rather than the defensive side, and that might not necessarily have been a good strategy. But anyway, now, okay, you bring up the fact that if you have a prospect, ideally you can look at their past history of decision making.
Yes.
What if you can't? In some cases, you don't have access to that, particularly if it's not a publicly held company, and therefore a lot of what this person has done, or even if it's public and they're not that senior, there's not always a way to find that. So how do you, when you walk into a meeting with a prospect, how do you get that information? How do you profile that person?
Well, you start asking questions about them, and that's where this customer avatar concept that was introduced, I think, widely in 2013 by marketers, but they couldn't explain it correctly, and I will talk about that in a second. But there are certain questions that will define survivor or inventor. Like if you don't know what was the past deal that your prospect made, then just ask them. Like, what made you change that plan the last time? Okay. What is the one thing? And just ask them about one thing. They will talk about other things as well, but it will get them started. Okay. Just ask what was the one thing, the deal breaker for you that you thought like enough. I need a change. What happened? And they will mention either, we had this brilliant opportunity and it was innovative and I jumped in, or they will say like, hey, my employees just hated this and I hated this. And so basically you realize that they made a change when the change was inevitable. That is a survivor. Okay. Inventor is the one that makes change because they believe if they will not make change, they will not survive in the future. So they think about the future all the time. Survivors think about the present and the past. So one lives in the past, the second lives in the future. One cannot live without the other. This is all, Jobs of Wozniak situation all the time. Jobs inventor and Wozniak who thinks about now and structures and whatever happens inside of that, iPhone. That is Wozniak. And you cannot have jobs without Wozniak. That's the thing, okay? So you ask the questions like that and you prepare them, okay? Oh, what else? Everybody obviously has social media. You can see which posts they're sharing, for example. Okay. Are they sharing about threats? Are they sharing about some, new things, new shiny bright things? What are they interested in? I don't believe that in 2025 you can actually, go into a meeting and not have any information about your prospect. It's like very difficult, okay? Unless they're like super shadow multi-billionaires that don't want to, be seen or something, but you actually can find it. And you can spot once you have this, structure in front of you, this is a survivor, this is an inventor, you can scan the situation. Like for example, from my perspective, right now we're talking. I can see even if you would not mention that you are an inventor, I could see how you accept new ideas. Okay, the way everybody can nod, but you get excited about them. Okay, and you can't hide it, right? So I can see that, I can spot that. And in my mind, I go, okay, that doesn't make you inventor, immediately after we start speaking, but I get that inventor point in my head. And after I leave the meeting, I just make the columns, okay? Left, right, left, right. And that's how you spot the difference. And then you start this, negotiation process. And this is exactly why I don't like when the offers are dropped on the first meetings. Because you don't know who you're talking to. And most people are walking in, they forget to get to know the prospect. They ask some irrelevant questions that will not give them any advantage after the meeting or on the meeting. Okay, just to ask the questions, that's it. And then they leave and they don't know what to do next. So this is your new framework. Find out if they're a survivor or inventor on the first meeting.
That's so smart. I just love that. Now, you talk about people don't buy with logic or emotion, they buy with identity. Is the identity you're referring to, right, that survivor or inventor, or is it something else?
They buy the identity that you're creating. And that idea actually came to me in 2020, actually in 2021. I think we're living in the age of identity purchases. Um, the tendency that I saw there, well, it was just one random morning when I was reading, news, and Bernard Arnault, the president of LVMH, became the richest person in the world. And in any other time, it would be just a random Tuesday, but it was 2021, a year after pandemic. I mean, not just after pandemic, it was like pandemic, okay? And we were all kind of recovering, and people were losing jobs, and that whole financial situation. No one was doing super fine globally, okay? Even the ones who made lots of money, which is online marketers, even they were really frustrated. So there's no logical reason why the person who's running a luxury brand, which is not a direct primary, need, would become the richest person in the world. And I started studying that. And I figured out that especially in times of crisis, people want to show off more than they want to be. Okay. They want to look as rather than be. And that is their primary goal. And as you know, Jane, we're living in crisis for the last, I don't know, 15 years. So more or less, our, primary, I would say, goals would be to show that we're successful. That's where people are going towards. And the reason why I said that it's like identity sales now, because I compared that to Maslow's pyramid, okay? Because we were all talking about all my, I don't know, youth. We were talking about that Maslow's pyramid, that your product needs to be very, useful, and it needs to fulfill either, their hunger or their self-esteem or something like that. No, it needs to, right now, it needs to first fulfill their own identity and then everything else. Who is the person that they are becoming through cooperating with you? And if anyone, whether you're selling a toothbrush or you're selling a multi-million-dollar solution for your clients, if you just start with that question and then follow up with all the other things that your product is providing, you will win on the market. Okay. Who is the person that your prospect, your client is becoming by choosing you? And just focus on that. That's identity sales.
So interesting. So really what you're doing then, if I'm understanding you correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, is essentially you're selling the transformation.
You've been right the entire time during our podcast, so I'm not going to correct you for
Go
sure.
ahead.
Yes, I would say selling transformation. Well, here I might correct you a bit.
Okay.
I don't believe people change. Okay, I believe that people change, but I don't believe that you can change them. You can just lead the change, but you cannot force the change. And there is the whole other chapter of my book, which is selling change and leading change, which is you have to understand every single stage that the prospect is going through. And one of the stages that every prospect of yours that has to choose you over his current solution is going through is the feeling of betrayal. And we ignore that. We think that, you know what, the current vendor of our prospect has failed them, and let us point that out. And we are better, so let us, just go in, just show the numbers. We're better. That's it. But we don't acknowledge the fact that they have to experience this feeling of betrayal, that their current person, company, whoever that is, that they chose, that they trusted to be the best solution, for that money, for that service, for whatever, that they betrayed their trust. And this feeling of betrayal is something that most people don't want to acknowledge, and this is why they're not going through change. They don't want to feel like idiots, like I don't want to be wrong. And I've seen that in the trading business, okay, a lot. I was one of the heads of marketing department at the trading company a long time ago. And what happened is I saw this traders who would stick to that losing deal just to avoid to close it in a loss, and they would go deeper and deeper and lose all their money just to avoid saying, hey, what I was wrong. And when you see that people doing that with thousands of dollars of their own money, imagine how easy it is for them to do that with other people's money in a corporate sector.
You're absolutely right. And I think that is such a good point, talking about what they call sunk cost, right? As you're saying, people will sort of die on that sword rather than say, this isn't working, cut our losses and get out. They'll just keep throwing money and time at it rather than admit that they're wrong. And I think you're absolutely correct when you talk about in a sales situation, a person doesn't want to necessarily confront the fact that a system they have or a service they're using is not working, especially if they were the one who made the decision to buy it in the first place. So it becomes difficult. How do you help them cross that river?
Well, you need to insert one single idea. Okay. This is one thing that sellers who want to change something in the organization need to start with. First, you don't need to build trust. You can't. Okay. This is another lie that marketers are telling us. Online coaches are telling us. I spent my, teenage years. I was working at the B2B sector since I was 15, and I was cold calling and selling ads to companies. And I was meeting those, big guys, and I was trying to build trust with them. Well, you can't. That's the point. Until you cooperate with them, there is no trust. Until I will tell you more. Until your corporation brings them results, there's no trust. So don't spend your time on it. Just try to insert one single idea. Okay. Try to first identify whether they're a survivor or inventor. Come up with your strategy and insert one single idea. Then you have to be there all the time as their current vendor screws up. And the only thing that you can do is not to trash the current vendor, but point out things that will help them notice how their current solution doesn't work anymore. Okay. It's like, that's why I'm telling you that B2B deals, it takes like 12 to 18 months. And anyone who wants to get involved in high stakes deals needs to choose products with high commission, high reward. So it would definitely be worth it, because you don't want to go through this process and then get, I don't know, $10,000 commission in 2 years. You don't want that. But when you're a commission, like from insurance broker's perspective, one client can bring you, I don't know, $200,000 multiplied by 3 years at least, which is an average stay for the client, which is $600,000. Yes, you would go through this. Okay. And there are lots of spheres that are relevant to that situation. It will make you stick longer. And how do you go through this process? First, you insert a single idea. They start responding to it. They start communicating with you. You make everything about them. You're just there, okay, with your content, with your calls, with your presence here and there generally. And one more thing that I advise my clients to do is always, always, always speak to like at least 4 or 5 people in the organization, not one. And that's how we start our prospecting. Okay, we throw a net. It doesn't matter whether we spoke to CEO, we will speak to the gatekeeper, we will speak to the secretary. We will ask them the magic wand questions. For example, what is the one thing that you would, if you had a magic wand, what is the one thing you would change about ABC? Okay, one thing. And this is how we establish this communication. And then when the time is right, well, there's obviously steps that I will not go through right now because we don't have enough time. But when they reach this betrayal, you need to be there. Okay. And that's where you need to point out one thing that will basically lead them towards you. Okay. And that's why you need to know what is going on in the organization. And most importantly, you need to know the incumbent. You need to know your competitor. Most people avoid studying the competition. Always remember Sam Walton, Walmart. He was arrested once because he was measuring the distance between the shelves at his competitor's store. And he was crawling on the floor, measuring that distance. He was so obsessed with what are they doing differently. And what most people do is they just trash their competition. Hey, they're doing everything wrong. They get your prospects, they get your clients. Be obsessed with your competition. Find out how they do that. People are not idiots, I'm sorry to say, but even if the product of your competition looks bad on the paper in Excel file, what are they doing to cover that? Study that and then become that.
I think that's such smart advice. Margo, you've shared so many outstanding things with us today. I could talk to you forever, but of course I won't put you through that. Thank you so much for bringing so much knowledge and insights to everyone who's listening to this podcast. I think everyone listening is probably excited about what they've learned. And yes, I'm definitely going to put the links to where people can get your book. They'll be in either the description if you're watching this as video, or it'll be in the show notes if you're listening to this as a podcast. So absolutely, please take advantage of the opportunity to learn more from Margo.
Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation, and you're the true inventor. I really can't wait. I'm going to send you my book, of course, but I really can't wait for you to read about inventors more and learn about yourself, really.
Thanks for being with us here today on A Seat at the Table. If you'd like to see some of the other episodes, head on over to our podcast website at seat.fm. That's SEAT.fm. There's also a link here in the show notes. And if you're thinking that you'd like to be a guest on the show, you'll find information on how to apply there as well. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Jane Singer, and I will see you in the next episode.